Welcome back. We're looking forward, B'ezras Hashem, to continue the 12th Igeres HaKodesh, the 12th epistle of the Alter Rebbe. This is on page Kuf Yud Ches, is where we left off. I believe we left off the Mitzvah V'Kor, and the words begin, which is pretty much the center of the page. Words begin, V'hine Mudah Zais. It is known. So, just a bit under the center of the page in the original text, Kuf Yud Ches, or in the corresponding English text, or wherever you're watching this, wherever you're following this, we do mention. So, firstly, Igeres HaKodesh, the fourth segment of Sefer Tanya. The fourth segment of the Sefer Tanya Kadisha. We know there are 5 segments. We mentioned also its significance the other day of the Tanya having 5 segments, as Tanya is the Teresh Biksav of Teresh Achsidus. Explain this as well. We had a bit of a presentation. Igeres HaKodesh itself, there is indeed a backdrop to this whole segment, which is distinct of the previous, which is more, a study chapter following chapter. It is all 3 prior to Igeres HaKodesh, L'Kutei Amorim, Sharechet B'Emunah, Igeres HaTshuva. Every Perek is sequential to the previous Perek. It's an idea presented by the Alter Rebbe, if it's Tshuva, or if it's oneness and unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Igeres HaKodesh are letters. Each one is, of course, written separately, different times. For that matter, it's not even chronological. The way they're presented over here in time, certain letters over here presented later, which were sent before. We spoke about this, but there's a whole backdrop to these Igeres HaKodesh. We had a presentation at the very beginning of chapter of Igeres 10, very beginning of the 10th epistle, which it's so easy to find wherever you're watching, but namely on the original website, which is Tanya Online, one word, tanyaonline.com. You see the way it's set up. There's a few advantages to the original website. Easy to follow, the text on a separate scroll bar, but namely all the previous classes lined up on the left side of the screen. So, for example, the 10th of Igeres HaKodesh, it's a click away. At the very beginning, we had a little presentation in the backdrop of this unique segment, what it's all about, the common thread between all the Igeres, even though every letter has a unique and particular message. So you can, like I say, it's a click away. So too, we're probably on the 5th or 6th class in this very Igeres, in this very 12th epistle. So if you're following, you pretty much know what we're up to over here, what the message was up till now. And if not, it's really a click away to the previous classes on this very Igeres. Now again, it's a separate idea. Has an advantage. You call it an advantage if someone wants to learn Igeres Yud Beis, different than any, for example, L'Kutei Amorim Yud Beis. You would have to know what Yud Aleph or Yud or Tes or the beginning of Sefer Tanya speaks about, or in order to appreciate Yud Beis in L'Kutei Amorim. In other words, Yud Beis in Sharechet B'Emunah, the final chapter also Yud Beis in Igeres HaTshuva. Here, Yud Beis, it's a separate Igeres. It's a separate letter. So, understandably, when you have a little more knowledge of the previous, which was previously studied, or information in general, Sefer Tanya, of course, you can have a clearer appreciation of this very Igeres. But nonetheless, if you want to start from the very beginning over here, it's a few classes. I think this is the 5th or the 6th, but it's also easy to access. This is the point. It's easy to access on this original website, tanyaonline.com. So the Alter Rebbe in the very beginning of this Igeres quotes the pasuk in Yeshayahu, "Vayamaisat tzedakah shalim." The action of tzedakah would bring peace, and avodas of tzedakah, the service of tzedakah, would bring calm, tranquility, security forever, for eternity. End quote of the pasuk. Alter Rebbe asks, "What's this maisat tzedakah? What's this maisat tzedakah? Action of tzedakah, and avodas of tzedakah." We mentioned really every tzedakah, every extension of tzedakah is always avodah. This is human nature. It's always it's easier to do probably any mitzvah saseh, any positive mitzvah, Then tzedakah, we see it evidently. I'll shake the lulav and esrog, I'll put on the tefillin, but tzedakah is a different type of effort. We spoke about this the other day. Why the nature, and this is how it's embedded in this psyche, the nature of the human being, most of the human beings, that is. That's why it's so special. The mitzvah becomes so much more special, especially this idea. It's not just by chance. This does so much. That's why it says tzedakah will bring redemption. So all mitzvahs lead to redemption. Now, in order to appreciate this, Ilukutei Amorim, also click away. The 36th chapter, that begins an explanation. It's such a beautiful, eloquent presentation of the entire purpose of creation, why Hashem created the world. What was the purpose of this investment? And what is the objective? What is the goal? And he presents this, lays this out so accurately, and for us to appreciate why we're here and what we accomplish through every mitzvah that we do. And Perek Lamed Zayin, he expands on this very idea, and he says that in the end of the day, every mitzvah is sublimating another part of Elam Haza in order to make it more refined, more godly, more divine. And that's the way the world will become a redeemed world, a godly world, a world which would demonstrate naturally the divine message, the divine spirit, the divine energy, which really it's all about. It's there today. The only thing it's so covered up and eclipsed by the intensity of the impure side, as again is explained there. And when we do a mitzvah, we stay away from a sin. We peel off all the layers which are covering over the emes Hashem, the true energy which exists, and it is the mere fabric of even in this very physical world, despite the darkness, despite the non-transparency of the emes Hashem, which is really the fabric of everything in Elam Haza. When we do the mitzvah, we take away these layers. But at the end of the day, this is there's no other. Nothing has independent energy other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, other than Hashem himself. In other words, the mere fabric of this world is, in the end of the day, the godly energy and the godly reality, which is the very makeup, the very existence of everything, and including this very physical world. The problem is it's not demonstrative. It's to the contrary. The Hashem allowed, so to say, the autonomy of the Umas. This was counters the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in every area, in every detail, and the point of the mitzvah, or refraining from sin and doing the positive mitzvah, is to remove these layers and reveal this emes Hashem le'olam even to this very physical world. And then, so naturally, this world is going to demonstrate its own inherent reality, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki ayin b'ayin yira, the physical eye will be able to detect the godly reality. Because why not? Why do you need just a spiritual experience, or out of, so to say, body experience to note something? You don't need an out of body experience to notice this is a table, and this is a cup, and that's water, and that's light, and that's a cloud, and that's grass. You don't need that because it's natural. So too, the godly reality will be natural to the human eye. It will be, all the layers will come off. So the truth, the inherent truth, which exists now in this very physical world, will come to expression, come to total manifestation. So the physical eye, ayin b'ayin yira, even the physical eye will be able to see the godly reality. V'ro kol basar yachtov, the pasuk underscores the very physical flesh will be able to identify, because this is what is true now, true always. What we accomplish through learning Torah and doing Hashem's mitzvahs, refraining ourselves from sin, we take away these layers and we reveal this which is inherent within even this very physical world. And this is what we're going to appreciate and experience. When Mashiach will come, and again, that's basically the direction of the Alter Rebbe in these chapters, previous starting from really Lamed Hey, the 35th chapter, but he goes on, Lamed Vav, Lamed Zayin, Lamed Ches, 30, and again, this is in Likutei Amorim, which is the first segment of Tanya, and it's again lined up, as we merited in this framework in this class to conclude the Likutei Amarim, Shaykh B'Emunah, Igeres Tshuva, and now we're holding the fourth segment. So it's, of course, lower on the site, but you can see it. It's such easy access to all these chapters, and in that Lamed Zayin, it says that's why tzedakah is so unique, and that's why the Gemara says the Gdeilah tzedakah shemevias geula brings redemption, because tzedakah does so much more in the act of giving charity, even from a certain perspective and point of view, more than other mitzvahs, based on our understanding and appreciation of what every mitzvah accomplishes. Then we could easily understand why tzedakah pulls us so much closer to redemption, even vis-a-vis all the other mitzvahs. So every tzedakah has a certain avodah. It's an effort, but nonetheless, this pasuk seems to differentiate. There's ma'aseh tzedakah and avodah tzedakah, and in other words, literally translated, the action of tzedakah and the service of tzedakah, and you see the reward. Ma'aseh tzedakah brings shalom. The avodah tzedakah brings something so much greater. In other words, the result, the reward is the consequence. Even is hashgate vavetach hadelam, calm, security, certainty for eternity, which is of course more than shalom. But the whole, if you realize, shalom is not something simple. Shalom is something which is extraordinary. This is what the elaboration of the Alter Rebbe in this very word shalom, in this this page and a half or so, maybe even more. Explaining what shalom, the virtue of shalom, it's something very grand, extraordinarily grand. It's accomplishment, it's an opening to the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the infinite expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, you see the previous classes in order to come to this point and what it accomplishes individually and on high, and how it brings, it's about the greatest blessings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, together with that, with perhaps the greatest, or from a certain perspective, the greatest, even beyond the blessings which we so aspire for in our daily requesting and beseeching and praying for, in our what we need as a human being, what we need as human beings. Of course, these are the blessings which we so aspire to, but a greater blessing, perhaps even more than all of that, is clarity, because people can have so much physical abundance of the physical or blessings, physical blessings which we aspire to, or blessings which are manifest and make a difference in our physical life, and we can have that in abundance, but nonetheless, not necessarily we have calm and tranquility and serenity, because there's this mix-up, this blurriness, and the confusions which exist also on a constant, presented to us on a constant basis. And there's nothing like clarity, there's nothing like transparency, and this is also part of the blessing of shalom. It brings a certain adjustment into our minds and our hearts and our views, perspectives, points of view, and that itself alleviates us from anything which disturbs our appreciation to life, to the blessings which Hashem bestows and gives us spiritually, physically, and it allows us to be healthy psychologically, emotionally, and so on, which is a greater blessing, far even a greater blessing than, or brings such completion to the blessings which we aspire to, the blessing which would manifest and contribute to our physical well-being. That is part of the message of Shalom, like we learned in the previous classes, and again, a click away. So the Alter Rebbe now goes on, and he starts narrowing down, landing back into the pasuk, narrowing down into that verse which says the difference between Ma'aseh Tzedakah and Avodah Tzedakah. So Alter Rebbe begins today, it's known sheYisrael b'tivam, that the Yid in their nature, their very nature, achmanim ugvegem lechasadim. The Gemara says shleisha simanim yesh ba'umazu. There are 3 signs to identify this nation, this Jewish nation. What are they? They are merciful, they're compassionate by nature. It's not only a decision they make, okay, today we're going to be compassionate. No, this is the DNA of the Yid. He's compassionate. Goim lechasodim, he extends kindness. And then the Gemara continues there by shanim, also reserved, more introvert. Literally by shanim means to say like more a low key, low profile, shame. Baishan means someone who is the word baishanut is about shame, but shame again not is shameful, is a negative idea. When someone does something inappropriate, it's a shameful act. No, they're more reserved. It's a reserved type of person. The personality of the Yid is more a reserved personality. This is the three simanim the Gemara gives, and of course the Alter Rebbe doesn't underscore the latter because we're talking about the in the context of giving, being merciful, extending kindness, rachmanim ugei mechasadim. This is the nature, the DNA of the Yid. And there is simple reason, because their souls extend themselves, evolve from Hashem's holy attributes. Now you saw that, you can appreciate this in the second chapter of Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe begins, the second nefesh is chelik elakami mal mamash. It's part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it starts all the way, it's rooted all the way in Chochma Datzilus, which Chochma is the first of all the 10 midas. In the end of the day, the entire neshama, like the Alter Rebbe begins the third chapter. This is L'Kutei Amarim. It's a click away, the first segment. That therefore the nefesh has 10 expressions, 10 spheres corresponding to this Olam Atzilus, the world of Atzilus, which is, again, we spoke many times. This is the world which houses the ultimate oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's where the neshama comes from. It's a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And because of a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there are 10 spheres in Olam Atzilus. The neshama also has these 10 levels. It stems from those 10 spheres. So it has Chochma Bina Das, the ability to appreciate, to perceive, to understand the godliness, the godly reality, and in a very natural way. In other words, of course, it has to put its mind to it because it's born, the neshama is invested in a body, and it's born into and becomes part of, so to say, the reality of Olam Hazeh, this very physical world. So on the onset, what it sees, when it opens its eyes, it sees matters of Olam Hazeh, and what it invests in intellectually is matters of this very physical world, which again, it's not about wrong or right. It's about, that's what it's inclined to from the perspective, its bodily inclination or bodily pull, bodily drive. But it realizes, it reflects the fact, no, I have a neshama. The Yid has a neshama, which is a chelik elakami mal, which is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it tunes into that space. So automatically, the neshama has the ability, the cognitive faculties of the human, of the Yid, could appreciate and understand and have clarity, even have clarity on matters of godliness, which God is all about. God, right? Godliness is about God, which is not about seichel, not about the confinement of the way we understand. We can't, and a human being cannot understand its creator. But nonetheless, Hashem allowed us to have a certain appreciation and clarity in the divine reality, which that's the gift, part of the gift of the Yid having a chelik elakami mal, part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as part of his DNA, the part of the Yid. This is the makeup of his neshama. So he has the ability to tune in to the godly reality, intellectually and emotionally as well, because we come from Hashem's midot, Hashem's at all 10 attributes. And one of Hashem's attributes is, of course, chesed, kindness, for that matter. And Hashem's kindness is an infinite kindness, because it's God's kindness. God is infinite. And therefore, and especially when you're talking about the midas of Atzilus, a world of infinity, a world which is imbued with the absolute oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the midas, Hashem's attributes, express that same infinite, absolute kindness. When you're talking about chesed, kindness, bli gvul chesed, even though it's a midah means measurement, of course, in comparison to higher than Atzilus, which we spoke in the past. There is true bli gvul. We see it in the subsequent chapter as well, Be'ezus Hashem, subsequent Igeres, Epistle, famous Chelik Yud Gimel, and other places. Even over here, the Alter Rebbe, even in this chapter, he speaks about Tiferes, which introduces itself or connects to something which is even higher than Atzilus, to the true infinite expression, the clear, pure, infinite expression of the Ein Sof, of the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Atzilus, nonetheless, there's a certain bli gvul, a certain infinite dimension within Atzilus, because Atzilus is a world where lo yigur chara, meaning to say it's all imbued with the absolute oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So all the midas of Atzilus carries that same energy, that same spirit. So if it's chesed bli gvul, infinite kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's where the neshama comes from. So this is why the Gemara says, the nature, the very nature of the Yid, bitiv'am, in their very nature, they are compassionate, and goyim lechasadim, by nature, they extend kindness because they come from the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's the iconic kindness. That's the absolute iconic kindness, or iconic kindness, which demonstrates the absolute notion of kindness. And that's where we come from. So, by extension, we have that within us. So, naturally. Asher chesed geiver bahen. Al midas hadin b'hagbura b'tzimtzum. For that matter, one can argue, and as Alter Rebbe with this one line puts things right away in perspective, and said, okay, so Hashem's midas are pure. Hashem's midas are not only pure, they have that certain expression of infinity, meaning to say they're not limited. The chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not a limited chesed, because this is chesed of Atzilus. Again, to make it clear, in the end of the day, there's a greater and a deeper expression of kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because ultimately Atzilus is a world, and these midas are called midot. Midah is a measurement, but you cannot compare Atzilus to the world's lower than Atzilus. Bria, Yitzira, say even Bria, because Atzilus is again a world which houses the Ein Sof, the infinite purity, unadulterated purity of the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So every midah is imbued with that infinity. So if it's a midah of chesed, kindness is chesed bli gvul. So one can argue, what about gvura? Gvura, which is the opposite of chesed, discipline. And God forbid, no one wants gvura bli gvul. Well, there is a concept that sometimes the chesed itself comes in a very strong way, meaning to say that the chesed is disciplined, if you will, in a way that it comes through much stronger than the chesed itself. It's explained in a number of places. What's that supposed to mean? Arouse your gvura and help us, because we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shouldn't even be limited. It's like rain. You have regular rain, you get a stormy rain. So usually stormy rain would bring floods and would have the counterproductive result. But nonetheless, rain is inherently is a blessing. So when there's famine, or there's a country did not experience rain for many months, and all of a sudden, and if it starts raining, regular rain won't do the job, because the earth is so thirsty for some good, it was just for an important downfall of rain. So when you have a strong pour, at least towards the beginning, in order to saturate the earth with, the proper rain, means say with the proper dampness that it needs in order to be productive, that's a great blessing. You don't want the regular rain. You want a great and hard downpour of rain, because it's so perched, it's so thirsty, it needs so much of rain, as an example. So you ask for not the regular geshem, you ask for gvuris kshamim, as actually the lashon is masha v'rocha merida geshem, in the bracha of gvura, like the Gemara says in Tainis, that it's about gvuris kshamim, because we want the bracha to be in a way, many times it shouldn't be regular, it should be gvura, which is beyond the infinite expression of chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is explained in a number of places. But here we're talking about, when you compare the two midas, if you're talking about the infinite chesed, so what about the infinite gvura? Which gvura is opposite effect of chesed. It holds back. And holding back usually causes a lot of issues. Most of the issues which ultimately end up negative, collectively, the Am Yisrael, or the world in its entirety, the different chaotic times and periods in our history. The last century is an example. Of course, it's an expression of gvura. And, we see Bli Gvul. It was like no end. Such a dark period. That was a full manifestation of the gvura of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Other times, we saw the chesed of Hashem. many times. In other words, what we see, that Hashem's midas are always in function, but what is more manifest? So one could argue and say, okay, the nature of the Yid, the inherent nature of the Yid is to give. And if you see where the Alter Rebbe is going, this is the Maisa, the most natural expression, the most natural doing of the Yid. And therefore the Alter Rebbe is going to compare this to the Avodah, which goes beyond even his own godly nature, but let's not jump the gun. So you have Maisa Hatzdaka, is because, as he's saying over here, this is a natural, at the end of the day, everything is an effort, but nonetheless, it's in the DNA of the Yid. It's an effort to do everything, an effort to sweep the floor, but certain people have this certain nature. They get up and they sweep. The Yid has the nature to extend himself, to express kindness and compassion, because he comes from the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So one could argue, if he's connected to the midah of Chesed, he's connected to the midah of Gvura. So who says that the Chesed will override and land and express itself on the way of giving and being compassionate, extend kindness? Maybe, God forbid, the other way around, because we're connected to all the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Alter Rebbe says, one of the reasons, famously, is brought in Zohar, that one of the reasons why the Chesed is the first of all the 7 midot, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, and so on. Just like the first, you have the idea of the first in a family dynamic. The father, the mother, the parents, they extend on top, and the head, and even between the two parents, the father, a leader usually, he brings the bread to the table, sustains, supports, and so on. The fact that the Chesed, it's not just arbitrarily, the Chesed just is the first of the 7 midas, it's the head. And therefore, the Lashon of Zayir, it's Ozlim im Kuli Yamin. It goes together with all the other days, meaning say all the other midas. It's a leader. It's dominant over all the other midas. That's the reason why it's the first. So when you talk about the Yid, which is connected to the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the first one of the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is Chesed. So what is dominant by the Yid is indeed Chesed, is indeed kindness. And that's what he says, Chesed Geiver Bahen. The kindness overrides over the Din, Gvura, and Tzimtzum, or judgment, severity, discipline, or close, Tzimtzum, condensement, which is associated, of course, about Gvura. Chesed overrides that. The mere nature of the Yid, of the Chesed's Geiver, is dominant over Din, Gvura, Tzimtzum, which is ultimately the character of Gvura, severity, discipline. It's overridden by the Chesed. Like it says, Govar Chaste al Yireo. The literal translation, we always try to make sure that before we say the Alter Rebbe's explanation, we try. It's always important to know the simple meaning of the pasuk. Of course, there's never anything simple. Even in Pshat, you open up Tanakh, you see so many different pirushim on one pasuk, but there's a simple pirush, Rashi, Mitzvah Tzion, Mitzvah David, Mitzvah Tzion is as an example. So the Mitzvah David, which again between both of them, they try to bring out a certain pashtos, a certain simple or the basic understanding of the verse. So when you say Gover Chasda al Yireov, is Hashem strengthens His kindness over those who fear Him, which means He extends with determination His kindness al Yireov for those who fear Him, which is of course a pasuk which has a lot of blessed and positive energy. Hashem not only extends His kindness, but He strengthens His kindness. His kindness should come through forcefully to those who fear Him. The Alter Rebbe's pirush over here is Gover Chazdei al Yireov, that the Yirei of those who fear Him, which is inherently the Yid, what is Gover, what is dominant, is Chesed, which is of course coming from Hashem's Chesed, because the Yid stems from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a Chelik Kamimal, part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, part of the dynamic of Atzilus. Or in Atzilus you have the 10 spheres, and you have the 10. Chesed is the first one of the Midas, right? There's the Chochmah Bina Das, just like by us, or the reasons by us, because that's the way it's on high, the cognitive dimension, and then you have the emotional, the attributes. The first one of the attributes, the cognitive, are Chochmah Bina Das. The emotion, the attributes begin with Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Netzach Chayt Yisod Machzor, it begins with Chesed. So too, just like it's on high, Chesed is the Geiver which stands dominant over all the other midas. So Al Yireyo, to the Yid, which comes from the midas of Atzilus, he has as well, he or she has as well, that Govar Chazdei, the domination of over Chesed, over Gvura. And therefore, kindness and compassion is something which is so natural to the Yid. That's why the Gemara says, Simona Sholomozo, what is the sign? How could you detect the Yid? Well, he's a Baishan, he's a Rachman. Or a Rachman and a Geim Chesed as well as a Baishan as well, which really is a godly type of character. We don't need to explain why Baishanut is also aligned with godliness, which is opposed to haughtiness, ego, and so on. My way or the highway. No, a Baishan is a reserved person. It's not that he's one who's trampled and stepped over because of his or her reservation. No, it's a character. You stand for this which is correct and make sure that the incorrect does not push its way through, but nonetheless, it's done in a very true way, in a very deep way, in a very convincing way, a way which is stemming from a beautiful character of introvertness, reservation, and so on, which is, of course, a godly character. But referring to this, which we're talking about over here, Rachmanim and Chasad, therefore the Yid by nature is compassionate and extends kindness. Therefore, the neshama is called the daughter of a kayin. It says kayin isha chesed. The kayin is inclined to chesed because this is the difference, famous like it's explained in Zohar, in Kabbalah. The kayin stemming from chesed. The Levi is gvura. Therefore, Levi was about song, removal. Kayin is about service, connection. The difference of chesed and gvura. So it says kayin is associated with chesed. The Jew, the Yid is called Bas Kayin, like it says in Zohar, because the Yid by nature is about expression of compassion and kindness. So therefore, now we could again, focusing on the pasuk, on this verse, the charity which comes from this level, this expression, this midah, this character of the Yid, because he or she stems, again, as a Yid, they stem and they come from the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore they are so naturally kind, or by nature so kind and so compassionate. So this expression of this type of kindness, this type of charity is called Maisa Hatzdaka. As the Alter Rebbe explains, where do we find this in this charity extending itself in a very natural way, the word Maisa, because this is what Maisa is. When you say Maisa, this is an action. Like someone goes to work, it's Maisa. The for that matter, in the whole idea is Sheishes Yomim Tasa Melachtecha. 6 days a week you do your work. Does it mean that you don't make an effort to get up in the morning, to be functional, to put yourself in a structured schedule? Of course it takes effort, like everything in life takes effort, because we have this which always inclined to go to the other side, to be less responsible, and we have to work it out and make an effort that our lives are conducted and run responsibly, and it takes effort, of course, but nonetheless we're still the whole idea is to get yourself in a routine, and you do the same thing day in, day out, basically. And again, as a responsible person, you go to work, you come home, but again, it's a good thing. Hashem wants a person to put himself into a routine, to work, to bring home bread, the parnasa, that is, his livelihood, to be able to put bread on the table, to pay his bills, and to live a meaningful, godly, divine life. So that routine, you see in the words of Titus, Tasa, Sheishes Yamim Tasa Melachtecha, you're doing your work. Because this is what Maisa is, it's routine. So when you talk about the tzedakah, which the Yid gives as a result of the fact of them stemming from the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore their kindness being so natural to them, this is the routine of giving tzedakah, because it is routine for the Yid. It is, like we said before, this is the very nature of the Yid. So therefore, we can appreciate the terminology of Maisat Tzedakah. This is what the Yid does. The Yid gives Tzedakah. Adavar shekvar nasa, or shenasa tamid, or something which is constant, or something which was done. And again, in this case, not done in actuality that I did that yesterday, in action that is, I did it yesterday, a year ago, and that's what we're talking about here. No, it's done. I'm doing it today because I did it yesterday. Why did I do it yesterday and I did it the day before? It's because that's who I am. It's like a person breathing. It's, of course, it's kvar nasa. The moment you came into this world, you started breathing. Because God forbid, if you don't breathe, you expire. And that's the very nature of the human being, to breathe. And you don't make such a fuss about it. Again, we appreciate Hashem's blessing. He gives us the ability to breathe, but we don't count every breath as an example, because this is who we are as human beings. The health of the human being is defined of, the pulse, of course, and expresses itself, and then the person's constantly breathing. That's davar hanasa. It's done yesterday, the day I was born, and the day after, the day after, the year after, and the year after, and larichas yam mishalim tevis. This is maisa. If you want to say breathing, this would be a clear example, analogy to this idea. You're doing it all the time. You did it yesterday, and there's where you're doing it today. As he says over here, something which was done, oishanasa tamid, or something which is constantly done. This is the who the Yid is, and therefore the tzedakah, the extension, the kindness, the charity the Yid would give in this framework of Maisat tzedakah, because it's associated with where the Yid comes from. So this becomes something which is natural to the Yid, something which is present, and it's something which is constant, and the Yid's accustomed to do it. Hergel, rogel, it's something which is constantly expressed, and it's constant by the Yid. And Afkan over here, when we talk about this Maisat tzedakah, midas chesed v'rachmanos hutba b'nefesh kol beis Yisrael. When you talk about the Yid, the kindness and compassion are embedded, are so naturally embedded, and are part of the nature of the soul of all, the entire house of Israel, every single Yid, because every Yid is a neshama, which is a chelik of the kamimal, part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mikvar meis b'riyusa. From the day they were created, at all times, mikvar from the very beginning, from then, from the past. And from how far the past, from the way they were, from right when they were created. As they evolve from Hashem's midas. Be like Dr. Rebbe explains, and again, it's worthwhile to cross-reference over here to that very chapter, the second chapter in Likutei Amorim, where Dr. Rebbe begins that every Yid has a godly neshama, it's a chelik of the kam mimal mamash, part of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, which Kodesh Baruch Hu infused into the Yid, and he brings the pasuk vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. You can see there, as Alter Rebbe explains, with three ideas. One, the difference of talking and blowing. A person can talk for a few hours, even though it's all the breath, the oxygen or the breath which is coming, which formulates the speech. Nonetheless, you can talk for many hours. Blow, you're very limited how much you can blow, even though there's a certain similarity between the two. But this is the externality of expression of breath, and this is coming from a very deep internal place. So, of course, everything comes from Hashem. One can argue you need the Yid. The neshama, the Yid, is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What, the table that I'm sitting in front of, or the chair, or the cup of water is not part of the energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It wouldn't exist if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not extending energy right now in order to keep that alive. And we celebrate this idea as well. We say it every day. That Hashem renews, infuses His energy into creation every day, every moment, every second. And again, this is the predication of the message of Shar Yichud V'Emunah. The Alter Rebbe underscores this idea in the very first chapter of the second segment, Shar Yichud V'Emunah. It'd be nice to look there as well, which Alter Rebbe speaks about the constant dependability of creation of their Creator, receiving the energy of the Creator just to exist, not only to function, just to exist. If Hashem will pull back His energy, it's not that things would fall apart or similar. No, it would cease to exist. It would literally disappear. So everything is connected to the godly reality. But here, look, Alter Rebbe so eloquently explains the difference of speaking It's also, you're also extracting breath, extracting oxygen or breath from yourself, and that itself formulates the words that you're talking, as an example. But the reason why you can go on so much versus blowing, which is so limited, you can only blow for a few minutes, or probably less than that, is because this is the externality of the extension of one's inside, so to say, of the one's breath, and similar. Because it's external, therefore, that's the reason why you can go on and on. The blowing, the breath which comes from the through via blowing, is coming from the very deepest parts of the blower. For that matter, you could hear and appreciate speech behind a closed door, but a closed door will block the breath, block the blowing, as an example, because it's coming from the very deepest parts of the human being when he blows. And therefore, when it comes to creation, what does it say? Bidvar Hashem shamayim nasu, that Hashem created the world with speech. He spoke creation into being. When it comes to the neshama of the Yid, represented by Adam, we explained, even though Adam was the first human being, but nonetheless, it was meant, Bereshis Bar Elokim, everything was led to the time that Avram Avinu would be born, the ultimate objective and goal of creation, starting from Avram Avinu, which was the first halachically, in other words, categorically, that is, the first Jew, and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and then the tribes, and then eventually led Am Yisrael to Mitzrayim, and eventually to receive the Torah. The purpose of creation to begin to unfold, and that was in Hashem's mind when He imbued the neshama, the nefesh, into Adam. So even though this is a pasuk referring to Adam, but of course it's referring to the ultimate goal and objective, or those who will implement the Hashem's ultimate goal and objective in creation, which is the Jew, and again the Jew's message to the entire world to work together. They're Oyer Lagoyim Nesatich. Of course, the Jew is the one who is the shiny example, and has the responsibility to lead the world in that direction, to bring light and positivity and godliness into the world in general, and particularly the areas of the opaque states and times and generations and system and different experiences within the evolution of Elam Hazard, to imbue light, to make sure that every space, every moment is illuminated with a godly reality. This is the mandate of the Yid. And therefore, Oil Lagoyim Nisaticha, not to dominate over nations, but to lead nations and guide them, that they should also implement their mandate in infusing light and life and the divine light into reality, into creation. So it all began when Adam Rishon, with the first human being, with Hashem's intent that everything will unfold till the purpose of creation will be able to be met and to be able to be implemented and executed. So I'm just saying this because many people ask, oh, isn't this pasuk say about Adam Rishon? Where do you see that it speaks about the Yid? But no, but in the very beginning, Bereshis Bar Elokim es Hashemayim es Haaretz, Beis Reshis, Hashem had in mind, of course, the ultimate goal, like anybody else. Lahavdil, you start building a home, your ultimate goal is when you'll be able to live in that home. Hashem created the world with the objective and goal that this is going to be a world which is going to be imbued with the godly reality of our holy Torah and the implementation of its mitzvahs, which will eventually begin in a very structured manner through Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel, which receives the Torah and shares the message, not the Torah. The Torah is pertinent precisely to the Jew, but the message of Torah, of infusing the world with a godly reality by extension of Torah to the entire world. So this pasuk in the end, yes, it says about Adam Rishon, but of course it's referring to the Yid. And what does it say? Back to the message, Vayipach. When it comes to creation, Hashem spoke creation into being. So it comes from the externality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When it comes to the neshama of the Yid, it comes to the most inner core, inner workings of Hashem. But the neshama yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. And Alter Rebbe speaks about the difference of different relationships or different connections. It could be a student-teacher connection, but then there's a child who comes from the inner word of the parent, inward of the mother, inward more initially even of the father. It's a different reality. What could be connected to other parties, but you can't compare it to the connection of a biological child. It comes from the inner workings of the father. It explains also the difference between machshava and dibor, the difference of speech and thought. Thought, that's why the reason why thought is constantly mishaitetes tamid, is constantly flowing. You can't interrupt thought. You could guide your thoughts, what you would be thinking or meant to. We can't just let the thoughts just flow in every direction, because of course it will veer off the way Hashem wants a yid to think. God forbid. So we can direct our thoughts, but we can't stop it because it's so close to the soul. The soul is constant, and therefore the thoughts are always expressing themselves. Speech, you can talk, and you could not talk. Eis ledaber beis lachshes, like it says. Like Shlomo Melech says, time to talk and time to be silent. But is speech also an expression of the soul, and the soul is constant? Yeah, but it's an external. It's removed from the soul, therefore it could be interrupted. The thoughts cannot. And again, Alter Rebbe there explains, this is the Yid. The Yid is machshava, machshavten shel Yisrael, or the Yisrael olu b'machshava, rather. Yidden are connected to the thought of HaKadosh. Yidden are b'ni b'chayri, they're a child of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They come from the most inner workings of Hashem. And of course, the first idea, as the Alter Rebbe explains there Hashem blew the neshama into the Yid, represented then by Adam Rishon, again the first human being. But Hashem blew it as opposed to talking creation into being, speaking creation into being. That is the external dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why this is the deepest, the most internal expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's where the Yid comes from. So when the Yid has this with the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as part of him and her, part of their DNA, part of who they are, of course, kindness and compassion become so natural to them because they are rooted in the kindness, the infinite midas of Atzilus, or the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which express themselves in an infinite, absolute, godly manner in Atzilus. Again, as we spoke so many times, we just mentioned over here, the unique ambiance, the unique spirit of Olam Atzilus. It houses the ultimate, the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is about the absolute oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And every midah is infused with that infinite energy, which Olam Atzilus is all about. And that is part of the Yid, and the Yid comes from there. So therefore, extending oneself with charitable work, with kindness, is of course so natural to the Yid. And that's what he said. Let's see, he didn't say Mishkaz Ve'ipach, but you can see it again, the second chapter of the first segment, L'Kutei Amarim. It's a click away on the site, again, TanyaOnline.com. Ve'ipach ba'apav ato nafachta bi, these are psukim which says again and again that Hashem just didn't speak the neshama into the Yid, but he blew it into the Yid. Like it says, it comes from the inner workings of like it's a by lahavdal of the human being, so too comes from the inner workings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every day HaKadosh Baruch Hu renews the action of Bereshis. So usually this pasuk, like we said before, refers to all of creation. But nonetheless, here the Alter Rebbe is saying, just like it was the very beginning of creation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the neshama into Adam Rishon, from neshama coming from the inner workings of Hashem, so too this repeats itself on a constant basis. So I wake up in the morning, and like again he uses the pasuk Chadoshim Lapkorim Rabba Monasecha, which is again the Yid wakes up in the morning anew. This is an extension of the very beginning where HaKadosh Baruch Hu infused from the deepest core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu into Adam Rishon. That repeats itself every single morning a person gets up. Kol Yom V'Yom Mechadish Ma'aseh Bereshis. Again, in this case, when he speaks about Ma'aseh Bereshis, he's not talking about the generic Ma'aseh Bereshis that we know that is not directly connected to the deepest infusion or deepest blow of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning to say the deepest expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu reflected in the idea of blowing versus talking, which Hashem spoke creation into being. This would be classically Ma'aseh Bereshis. No, the Alter Rebbe is referring to this which took place at the time of creation, which was in the sixth day of creation, when Hashem imbues in Adam Rishon part of himself, extends part of himself into Adam Rishon. This repeats itself every single day, and every single person, every single morning a person gets up. He gets up with that very energy, and that, of course, lasts. It's part of the DNA of the Yid, so it lasts throughout the entire day. And as such, Maisa Hatzdaka, this is Nasa, it was, if Davar Sheh, like the Lashon Al Terebe, Davar Ha'hayve V'ragil Tamid, or when he speaks about Maisa, Kvar Nasa, was done, meaning to say, this was my action yesterday, the day before, the very beginning from when I was born, and Nasa Tamid, it's something which is constant, because this is who I am as a Yid. We'll stop over here in the text. And therefore, yes, it does bring the great bracha of Shalom, which I'll try to expand on in this 2 full pages, give or take, of the greatest bracha of Shalom, where Hashalom contains so much within itself. It contains actual bracha, and it contains the additional blessing of clarity, transparency, and a conspicuous approach to all of matters of life, conspicuous presentation of all matters of life, which really, as we explained the other day, that itself brings bracha, the bracha b'shleimus, to a whole new different level. In the sense of wholesome, it's an expression of wholesomeness, and it brings so much wholesomeness in the blessings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is the blessing of Shalom. And that comes from the Maisa Hatzdaka. Even though when you're going to say, oh, so if it's so natural by the Yid, so why are we getting this great blessing of Shalom? The answer is, yes, it's natural. It's like natural to the person to work 6 days a week. But you see, the people who are consistent, doing it right, so there's those who do it right and they end up with nothing, and there's those who do it mediocre and they end up with a lot. We know, again, especially in the last few decades, the smallest, garage type of trials ended up in the biggest profitable companies in the world today. So there is the idea that God establishes everything and gives the person parnasa based on his decision. But nonetheless, Hashem wants us to go into a structure, into routine. And you see when people who do so carry, just because they're following the pattern of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, orchestrated and the architect of this idea of investing 6 days of work is by HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. It's a verse in Torah. Hashem orchestrated this whole idea so the person follows this with, of course, integrity, honesty, and so on. And of course, he will carry the blessing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu because there's consistency. So you're going to say there's no effort because this is something which is part of the human being, that he wants to not sit in one place and go out and to the workforce and do a job. Yes, it's within the human being to do so, but it takes effort on a daily basis to get up and to do what you have to do as a human being. But it's an effort, and when you put in the effort, you see the results. In this case, yes, it's part of the nature of the Yid, but when it comes down to reality, of course it's an effort to give tzedakah. Money people usually put in their own pocket. You take it out from your own pocket and giving it to the poor, to the needy, or if it's to the organization, to the institution, in order to help others. Of course, it's something which is an effort. It's an effort to get out of bed, to go to your structured job. It's an effort to give tzedakah. But nonetheless, what's the backdrop of this success of giving tzedakah by the Yid? It's Maisa Hatzdaka. It's so natural for the Yid because he comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's a chelek elokam mal mamash. Part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, part of the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Hashem's midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is what dominates over the midas, the chesed, rachmanas, kindness, compassion, namely kindness, which is the first. And that becomes the nature of the Yid. So there's an effort together with that, simultaneous, or together with the effort, rather said, together with the effort, which this is what tzedakah is all about, imparting from money that I work for so hard, to give it to another party, another cause, which would benefit many parties, as an example, many people. But together with that, it's just the nature, it's who I am. The starting point It's a very natural, a healthy starting point because it's natural to the Yid. So yes, it's an effort. Yes, it's natural, but nonetheless, it's an effort, and therefore it brings the great bracha of Shalom, as was explained in the previous classes. Which again, if you want to find the message of Shalom, if you're new to, if you just came in today, the Alter Rebbe, has again a lengthier presentation over here of what the blessing of Shalom is all about. However, as the Alter Rebbe is going to go on, Bez Hashem, we'll look forward in this coming week. Lashon Aveda is a different idea. Here the person goes beyond even his godly nature. And therefore the pasuk with precision uses Aveda. Aveda is a service. And service is a different idea. That he goes beyond even his, again, divine nature. And therefore it brings about a total different blessing, which is Hashket Vavetachad, security and certainty for eternity, as Bez Hashem look forward continuing explaining this second half of the pasuk, this coming class. Bez Hashem, have